Hello, my friends. Welcome to Visualizing the PMBOK Guide. We're going to visualize the PMBOK Guide today by taking a look at a process in Chapter 5. We're going to take a look at the process known as Collect Requirements. Collect Requirements is the second process in scope. But to understand any process in the PMBOK Guide, I would advise you to follow my system that I have coined the Get Good system, G, W squared, U, and D. Let's examine what this means. This D stands for what am I doing? That is the process. What am I doing in this process? The next thing you need to ask yourself is, what am I getting from the process? That's the output. It could be a project charter, it could be a project management plan or something else. Then, what am I using? What am I using is really a combination of what am I using as an input and what am I using to work the process. So in other words, the tool and technique and the input need to be thought of in the U. The W squared is what am I getting and where is it going? And why is it going there? See? So what am I doing? What am I getting? The W squared needs to be linked to this G because it's where is what I'm getting going and why. So you've got what am I doing in the process? What is my output? What am I getting from the process? Then you've got what am I using? And then you've got the W squared, which is where is what I'm getting going and why is it going there? That's the Get Good system. So we're going to use the Get Good system to visualize the PMBOK Guide and get a better understanding of this process Collect Requirements. And I'm going to show you my lens of understanding of a process in the PMBOK Guide. So in Collect Requirements, you're first of all going to have an input, the project charter. The project charter is just one of the inputs to this process. The project charter comes from Develop Project Charter and goes in here. So when you look at this process, it is important that you ask yourself, where's my input coming from? It's coming from the process known as Develop Project Charter. And then, how about asking yourself, why is my project charter going in here? And the answer is in what the project charter is. Remember, it is authorization for the project, but there's a line item there. If you take a look at the Develop Project Charter process, you'll realize that it has high-level requirements. There is some high-level information in the project charter that is relevant here. The next input that you see is the project management plan, which of course needs no introduction. Your project management plan is an input, as you've probably seen already, to many processes. Out of the 49, it's an input to 47 of them. So that's the project management plan, and it's an input to Collect Requirements as well. So you can see the layout here of how the inputs are coming in to help this process. Where does the project management plan come from? It comes from the process known as Develop Project Management Plan. And this is how you visualize the PMBOK Guide. There's a lot of stuff to track, But once you know where your inputs are coming from and why they're coming in here, you're much better off to work the process. Also, an input to collect requirements, we have project documents and we have business documents. Now, what is in those project documents? You know that those project documents on page 89, so I'm just going to bucketize them into PD and put them here. So your page 89 project documents, they are some of relevance though. Not every single document on page 89 is a potential input to this. When we talk about business documents, on the other hand, we're very specific to the business case and the benefits management plan. So project documents. But if I were you and I was studying for this exam, do you know what I would do? I would go into the dregs of the project documents and I would try to understand which project documents are you talking about? And one of the project documents is the assumption log. The other is the lessons learned register. And the other is the stakeholder register. So if I was all out studying full throttle for this exam, I would note the three of relevance, just to keep my sanity, is assumption log, the lessons learned register, and the stakeholder register. And this is how you visualize, my friends, especially when you're in the elementary stage and you don't really understand what you're studying. You cannot take any prisoners. You cannot say, all right, I'm just going to let that one go. No, you want to keep track of everything, okay? So still on the inputs to this process, business documents, the one of relevance that they mention here is the business case. Again, business documents and the business case. The repetition and the deliberateness is going to help you, okay? You got to make it extremely deliberate and go through every piece with a fine-tooth comb. The next one that we have here is agreements. Agreements is definitely one of the sacred cows in this entire process or set of processes of project management in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. We don't have it too many times, but when we see it, we should pay attention. So your agreements could have requirements in there, contractual requirements. And to be specific, if you read in the PMBOK Guide, what the PMI tells us is agreements can contain project requirements. It could contain product requirements. The next thing that we have coming into the process is, well, let's say there are two things that you already know. You've seen them so many times. We've got EEFs and we've got OPAs. So we're talking about those enterprise environmental factors that are relevant to this process. And the EEFs that are relevant here are the organization's culture, the infrastructure, the personnel administration, marketplace conditions. We see that going in as well. And then we also have none other than its lousy sidekick, OPAs, organizational process assets. And OPAs is talked about ad nauseum in the PMBOK Guide just so many times. I recommend that people watch my videos. I've got videos out there that give you a shortcut to remembering these OPAs and EEFs. So I have various mnemonics for them. I have a mnemonic for the EEFs internal and the EEFs external. Go look for that video. All right, so that's pretty much it for our inputs. We got project charter, project management plan, project documents, business documents, agreements, enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets. Okay, so it's a mind map of sorts, but it's very visual, and going through this with a fine-tooth comb for every process is only going to cement your understanding of the content. It's going to make you ask questions, okay? So that is the inputs. Now let's talk about the tools and techniques, because when you look at the tools and techniques of this process, that is where things really begin to pop. That's when you really begin to understand what exactly is happening here, okay? So to illustrate these tools and techniques, I'm going to show the tools and techniques as a red arrow, and I'm going to show you several tools and techniques here that are relevant to the entire process. I'm going to put them on these nodes so that you can visualize them really well. And I might put some in this direction as well. Put some going from left to right so that we have enough space. All right, so let's start off with the very first one. For these tools and techniques, I like visualizing them as interactions of entities or people. And the first one is one of my favorites. It's expert judgment. And expert judgment, I use a scientist to show expert judgment, you know. The eggheads. Here is expert judgment. And expert judgment, when you see it, you remember, oh, that's expert judgment. You don't even need a single word. That is expert judgment. And I'm going to train you to remember what those icons are, because that is going to help you to recall the tools and techniques. Get it? All right. The next one is a rather large assortment of tools and techniques. It's data gathering. And under data gathering, we have brainstorming, we have interviews, focus groups, facilitated workshops. Well, not facilitated workshops. Here we have focus groups, I beg your pardon, questionnaires and surveys, benchmarking, quite a lot of stuff. But talking about gathering data, we can think about gathering data by putting it into a folder. So if I wanted to demonstrate data gathering, I could use my folder. Whatever works for you, just do it. So I've got my expert judgment, and I've got my data gathering here. And now, even without opening the PMBOK guide, you're making the linkages. Oh, expert judgment. Yeah, I remember what that is. Oh, data gathering. I remember what that is. You see where I'm going with this? And then when you look at that folder, you need to ask yourself, what am I using to gather data? How? Which data gathering tools and techniques? Brainstorming, interviews, focus groups, questionnaires and surveys, benchmarking. What am I doing in brainstorming? Generating ideas. What am I doing in interviews? Collecting requirements from people. Focus groups. What am I doing? Collecting requirements using the focus group. Questionnaires and surveys. What am I doing? Gathering data for those requirements. Benchmarking. Using a previous product as a basis for a current one to glean those requirements. And so on. That is how you need to think about this, okay? So, going a step further, the next tool and technique is data analysis. And for data analysis, I could use a number of things, but one of the things I use is a display showing some analysis going on. So in data analysis, I use the display, and the display tells you, oh, there's something going on here. Someone is analyzing some data. See that? And then the next tool and technique is decision making. But let's first talk about data analysis. So for data analysis, the tool and technique that is inside that is document analysis. So you're analyzing documentation in order to glean requirements from existing documents. belonging to the business, for example. Okay? So when we talk about the next one, decision making, and it has voting and MCDA, for decision making, we could use someone who's in a little bit of a quagmire here, trying to make up his mind about what to do, trying to make a decision. So without doing anything else, the scientist is expert judgment, the folder is data gathering, the icon of the computer is data analysis, and the clueless person is trying to decide on something, decision making. And the more you go through this, the more you're going to be able to anchor these icons back into what process it is. And this is how you make studying visual and simplified. Okay, so that's decision making. Next, we have data representation. And there are a couple of ways we could show data representation. And one of the ways we could do this is by showing a display of records or data that is being presented. So data representation, that pie chart should remind you, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing. Representing data. You see that? And you ask yourself, how am I doing this? Affinity diagrams and mind mapping. See that? Affinity diagrams and mind mapping. That's how you're displaying the data that you gleaned in the process of collecting requirements. Okay? Number 6 on the list, and if you're following along with me, it's on page 138 of the PMBOK guide. 138. 138. PMBOK guide. Okay? And we're taking a look at the tools and techniques. The next tool and technique on page 138 is interpersonal and team skills. And for interpersonal and team skills, we could use a number of things. I'm actually very specific about those that I choose in a book that I have created that has all of this stuff in mind map. Can you imagine having all of this stuff visually to go through? Ridiculously cool, isn't it? So cool. I mean, that you show it to a kid and it's so easy for them to retain it, So right here we have interpersonal and team skills. And in this instance, I'm going to use an image of these team members in a sort of communicating scenario. So you see that and you remember, oh, interpersonal and team skills. See that? Next, we have the context diagram. And what is a context diagram? What does it show you? Well, let's read from the PMBOK guide to get some good understanding of this. 5.2.2.7, context diagram. This is an example of a scope model. Context diagram visually depicts the product scope by showing a business system and how people and other systems, known as actors, interact with it. And in figure 5-6, they've got an example of a context diagram showing you inputs to the business system and how the actors, people, other systems receive that output and so on. So for this one, I have chosen something that looks a little bit more like a sort of flow, just to jog your memory and remind you that this is meant to be showing how business systems interact with the people who need stuff from it, the systems that need stuff from it, and so on. So that is your context diagram, okay? Quick on the spot check. What's that? What's this? What's this? What's this? And what's this? See? This works. You knew the lady was expert judgment, the folder was data gathering, data analysis for the magnifying glass on the computer, decision making for the question marks, and data representation for the pie chart, interpersonal skills for these folks, and the context diagram. Boom. You just nailed all of the tools and techniques by looking at an icon, not even text. What am I doing using these techniques for my students? I am anchoring back the concept to a visual. And once they look at that and they remember the visual, it becomes easy to recall what it's doing here. Why am I using it? So on and so forth. Okay? We've got one more to talk about, and that is prototypes. Now, for the prototype, when you think about prototype, think about a robot. We've got a little robot for our prototype here. That is our prototype. And you do know that a prototype is a way you can get early feedback on requirements. And that's why we've put it here. Okay? And that is actually your assortment of tools and techniques. Just like that. Wasn't that easy? It was fun as well, I dare say. Well, in my world of fun, a lot of times my students say, Phil, that's not fun. Nope. Nope, that's work. I see it as fun anyway. So now you get the idea of the inputs. You get the idea of the tools and techniques. Let's take a look at the outputs. So let's move out a little bit and let's go to the outputs. For the outputs, we are going to use a different color, and let's show them coming from here. Coming from here, probably. There we go. And as an arrow leading out. And there are two broad categories of these outputs, two very unique, I should say, outputs. So we're going to put them in a box here. Let's use this box. Or a different shape. There we go. Put them in here. And the first one is the RTM, Requirements Traceability Matrix. We also have, in addition to the Requirements Traceability Matrix, something known as Requirements Documentation. So here is our Requirements Traceability Matrix, the RTM, and this tracks requirements to their origin. It is quite a remarkable tool to use. I have used this on projects. I had 8 stakeholders, counting my boss in there. And really, my boss was working with me. I was the program manager, but at the same time, we were managing a lot of the projects within the program, especially the integration of the system we were building. So we needed to keep our stakeholders' requirements straight. We actually needed to get them to sign off on each one. Guess what we use? This bad boy right here, the RTM. Absolutely remarkable tool. Now it's an output, but I call it a tool. It's a tool in the project manager's toolbox to bring out on a rainy day when you need to keep stakeholders straight. So that's your requirements traceability matrix. And like I said, we also have requirements documentation. Requirements documentation that is used to track requirements to the needs for the business, or they actually show how the requirement meet the business need. That's how the PMBOK guide puts it. So these two do different things. They do different things. And I have shown you examples of these in the past, but in in the interest of putting a face to a name, I'm going to show you a requirements traceability matrix. So let's get one open here. I have shared this in the past with you. This was created by a buddy of mine, PMP, and it is fictitious. This is not real. What I'm going to show you is not a real project. It's a fictitious project. And we call this the backpack project because it's for making backpacks. Again, it's fictitious, not real. Here it is. And as you can see here, this really just tracks the requirement to its origin. Track the requirements to the source. But not just that, you can actually categorize these, prioritize these. You can also show which WBS item it's linked to. You could also show how it will be internally checked and how it will be externally checked by the business unit that's asking for it, the customer who's asking for it, whoever that is. So there are many different fields. And like I said, this is just fictitious. In the real world, you know, like when we used this, we had 128 items in the requirement traceability matrix. And not only did we use it to track requirements to their origin, we used it to track requirements to test scripts. We actually had all the test scripts numbered, and we had a column for that. See, we also had use cases for all of those requirements, and we had a field for the validation, the sign-off, we called it, the approval, the sign-off, whatever you want to call it. But we had a section there where each one of those 8 folks would have to indicate that they have not only approved the requirement, but they tested the requirement before it was approved. And that's what your requirements traceability matrix is meant to do. We had that process locked down pat. No wonder he got a promotion by the time we were done. Talk about a home run on a project. Then he left me in the department. Requirements documentation. This is, as I said, a document that is used to show how the requirements meet the need for the business. And again, this is fictitious, so it's not pinpoint precise on point like the PMBOK guide says. But another way you could look at requirement documentation, I look at requirement documentation as option B for those firms that are not creating a product, they're not creating a system or tools or software. They are maybe working on something else that does not require a traceability matrix. So they could use a format similar to this, which is a wide net. But if you read from the PMBOK guide what they say about requirements documentation, you realize it's rather flexible to your interpretation to some degree. It says, the format of the requirements document may range from a simple document listing all the requirements categorized by stakeholder and priority, to more elaborate forms containing an executive summary, detailed descriptions, and attachments. And if you read what the requirements documentation is meant to do, it describes how individual requirements meet the needs, the business needs for the project. And then if you go to page 148 in the PMBOK guide, it talks about how requirements are categorized into different types. So if you wanted to have a category for those requirements, nothing stops you from doing that. So you've got business requirements, stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, transition and readiness requirements, project requirements, quality requirements, so many different types of requirements. So now you guys have a good idea of what exactly I am showing you here when I say requirements documentation and requirements traceability matrix. That will make a lot more sense now, all right? And those are the 2 outputs of the process. Collect requirements. See, Now, for those of you who have found this to be helpful, useful, you like this approach to project management and you like learning in this way, well, we actually have a full-blown book on all of this stuff that shows you how everything comes together process by process. For example, in collect requirements, these are the same things I showed you. I've made a few changes here, but for the most part, the robot is replacing the guy with the question marks, and interpersonal and team skills are these smiley people. But ultimately, you can link each of those individuals to the list that you have in the tools and techniques. And then you can link those to the output from the process. So it gives you a tool and technique and output focus, because a lot of times we forget the tools and techniques, we forget the outputs that are critical. Those two are so important. The inputs, you see a lot of repetition, a lot of repetition. So, I mean, if you go back to what we drew, you see that these, for the most part, EEFs, project management plan, project charter, OPAs, and project documents, you see so much repetition of those that it becomes kind of unnecessary to harp on and on about them. People kind of get it and they can make their way themselves. You know, there are some anomalies, like agreements doesn't appear every single place. So where you see it, pay attention. And of course, business documents is very important. Where you see it, pay attention. But as a result of the repetition of the inputs, it became a little bit monotonous. And that's why in this view of the world, I have stayed with just the outputs and the tools and techniques. Still, as part of this publication, I also have a view of all of the different knowledge areas at a much more strategic, I should say, level, or I should say interactive level, where you can actually see how across an entire knowledge area, the different nuts and bolts are in place across an entire knowledge area. So if that sounds like, you know, something that is of interest to you, well, I want to invite you on down to go take a look at Praizion.com and find that book, because we have this book available right there. Now, before I show that to you, I would like to get to the point where we have those tools, I should say, interactions displayed from a different perspective. So let me show that to you. I call this the project data flow drive. Project data flow drive. Let's take a look real quick. And here, let's just focus on integration. Here, I sensitize you to the interactions of processes, inputs becoming inputs to other places, multiple places, outputs becoming inputs. As you can see in this schematic of project integration management, you can see the project management plan going everywhere, but then you can see change requests coming out of direct to manage project work and monitor and control project work. You can also see work performance reports coming out from monitor and control project work going into perform integrated change control. It is a knowledge area centric view. You can also see perform integrated change control giving approved change requests to direct to manage project work. You can also see deliverables coming from direct to manage project work going to manage project knowledge. And you can also see those lessons learned becoming part of project documents. And that will ultimately become an input to many other places. And that is just one of the knowledge areas that we're looking at here. We have perform integrated change control giving you the change log, which is kind of buried in the PMBOK guide, but we bring it to the surface because it is important that you realize this change log is so critical to stakeholder interactions, stakeholder engagement. We don't want to lose that. See, the issue log, we also show how the issue log comes out of the process known as direct to manage project work, and it goes into close project or phase, it goes into monitor and control project work as well. And you see that arrow coming out of there. And that is how we break down every single knowledge area. That's right, every single one. I'm not going to keep you much longer, but if we were to start scope, again, we show you the layout, how the project charter contributes to the first process in most knowledge areas, the Plan X management process. And then I begin to flesh it out, showing you how every process is interwoven, connected, basically 2 degrees of separation, or even just 1 in some instances. And it just shows how everything interweaves, and I don't want to go on and on, but you kind of get the idea. So for those of you who are wondering, well, how can I study using this approach, this visual approach, this tool and output centered approach? Well, the website is praizion.com, Praizion.com. If you go to praizion.com to get the book where I go through all of the processes in this fashion and all of the knowledge areas in this fashion, we have a book here called PMP Exam Key Techniques and Outputs ebook. If you click on that, it will take you to where you can get it, and you can download it instantly, and you can actually begin studying using this approach, especially for those of you who are very visually inclined. So let me go back a few steps. When you get on the Praizion site, scroll down, go to this PMP Exam Fix. It'll open this up, and there's the book. The moment you purchase it, you get a download immediately. All right. So I hope this made sense for you. I hope you found it useful. And as you study, whatever method you use, I wish you all the very best. Those of you getting ready for the PMP exam, remember, if you need help and assistance, we have training and coaching that is happening weekly between now and when you take your exam, which could be June 30th, or maybe it's the pilot exam. So if you are taking the pilot exam, the website that you want to go to register is pmsucceed.com. When you get to pmsucceed.com, you come to a page like this. Register, because you're going to get a plethora of content. You're going to get 4 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Wednesday. That's 6 hours every week of solid studying. And we are already on going to week 3. This is week 3. So, hey, this would be a perfect time to join. Join, and let's see you on the 15th. Or let's see you tomorrow, the 13th. Yeah, so you can come on the 13th and just start studying with us. That'll be really cool. Okay. So, like I said, Saturdays and Wednesdays. So actually the 12th, I beg your pardon. The 12th, you should come on the 12th, tomorrow, and just sign up, and then in addition to this, you get 2 months on our learning management system. You get that 20 plus hour curriculum. It's really more like 24 hours, which is a steal. It's so ridiculously inexpensive, because life coaching, you typically don't even find life coaching. How much more life coaching for the pilot exam? My goodness, you need to be on this program. Those of you who are not studying for the pilot exam and you just want a dose of the knowledge areas, we've got sessions in February as well, which are happening on Saturday, which is why we combine both, because those pilot students cannot forget the knowledge areas. They need the knowledge areas and then some. They need a lot of very specific content outline stuff. So if that's you studying for the current exam, and you don't want to come for the Saturday training because you hear the word pilot and you're scared of getting too much information, well, just come on Wednesdays, all right? Go to pmanonymous.com, and that will take you to this site, and you can sign up, you know? So yeah, the 12th of February, there we go. So on the 12th, we're talking about how to master the cost flow, the quality flow, the resources flow. And we're also talking a little bit about scheduling as a segue into cost. So there's still a lot to gain from the program, my friends. Let's see you there, okay? And for those of you who are struggling with the concept of Agile, you know you need to know Agile. I want to encourage you to go to agileprinciple.com. Now, agileprinciple.com is where you can sign up for another Saturday class where we are studying nothing but Agile. And we're looking at how Agile relates to the world of the PMP exam and how you can use Agile in the real world and many other great things like that. So why don't you go there? But let me share this with you. If you do sign up for the pilot training, the price of the Agile fundamentals becomes very insignificant, very, very insignificant. In fact, you get like over 50% off, you know, and that's being conservative. You get a lot off. You get like $300 off that. So if I were you, this is what I would do. If I were you, I would sign up for this. It only costs $350. And then when you sign up for that, you get this for $99. Ridic. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't showing you the whole story. I said, if you sign up for this, the pilot test exam course, which is going for $350, if you sign up for that, then you get the Agile piece for just $99. But you must sign up for the pilot exam. So that's a total of like $459 thereabouts. So for $459, you're getting very wholesome Agile training, and you're getting the pilot training, plus 2 months of LMS access. Let's go read the details. It's ridiculous. All right, so I hope that helps you. I hope this gives you some framework and some idea. I mean, some of you are great artists. You know, we had a student who actually drew a number of schematics, her own schematics for the PMP exam. I mean, these were really, 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 really nice. These were really, really awesome pieces of art. Really, really a piece of art. So, you know, everyone has their gift, and maybe you can draw and do flowcharts and all that stuff yourself. But maybe this gave you some ideas. I'm happy they did. Let me know. Drop me a comment below, and when you pass your exam, let me know that you're done. All right? Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll speak to you again sometime soon. Bye for now.